Hey, how you going everyone? Today we've got a new video on the Ford Ranger Raptor. Today we're going to be installing a brand new light bar. Alright, so here's all the stuff we've got at the moment. We've got our Lightforce Fascia kit for the Ford Rangers that allows us to put some switches just down in the lower section of the console, because there are no spots for switches on the Ford Ranger Raptor, so that's a very handy piece of kit right there. And we've got our 42-inch Roadvision curved LED light bar. I'd like to give a big thanks to these two companies because they really did help me out. Lightforce basically sent me the switch panel free of charge as a thank you for selling and installing their equipment for the past 8 years. And Roadvision came to the party and did the exact same thing and gave me a really good price on this light bar. So a huge shout out to those guys. Just a heads up, this is not a sponsored video. They don't even know that I have a YouTube channel. So they did it just out of the kindness of their hearts, and I do appreciate that. So what we're going to be doing today is just installing that light bar on the roof here. I've already got the brackets for it. So these are the Rhino Pioneer tray light bar mount kits. So it should be able to bolt straight to that. I'm going to try and see if I can bolt it below it, so I'm not raising the profile of the vehicle too much. But if that's not going to be enough space there, I will have to mount it on top. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have the wiring kit, so I'll have to go and pick up one of those maybe a little bit later today. But first of all, let's install this light bar and see how she looks. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure the distance between those two brackets from bolt hole to bolt hole, just so I can have the brackets in the position on the light bar itself before I try to mount the actual thing it's on there. Make it a little bit easier, especially since I'm a one-man job. And so that there's 47 mil. So I'm going to measure this light bar to the center. Then I'm going to half 47 and I'm going to add it to each side. That way I should have this light bar directly in the center. Alright, now that we had that all measured up and we've got those two brackets in their position, it should be alright to put on. So basically, just a heads up, words of warning. Those bolts that go through the top, make sure you put those in before you start lining up the bolts on the outside, because otherwise you'll have to remove them. And make sure to use the rubber blocks applied if you use a kit like that, because it does help with vibration and the bolt coming loose from driving over corrugations and stuff like that. So it is a very handy thing to keep on there. Alrighty, so that's the light bar mounted there. I probably will chop off the excess up there just to make it a little bit more neat. For the time being, I'm just going to route these wires back here, zip tie them in place, and I'm going to go and pick up a wiring kit, and then we should be able to wire this whole thing together and then install that switch panel. Should be a whale of a time, especially the fact that it's 36 degrees at the moment and about 100% humidity, because it's just been raining for the past let's say week. One thing I wanted to mention before I go pick up that wiring kit, like I said before about measuring the distance between those 2 points and then doing the math and figuring out where it goes on the light bar. See how easy that installation was for one man hanging it upside down? Just goes to show you proper planning and preparation prevent piss poor performance. So just keep that in mind, guys. Alrighty, so I've gone out and I've picked up my wiring kit here. The first thing I like to do is take it out of the box, make sure everything's there, and then I basically like to lie it in the position that it's going to sit, make sure everything reaches where I need it to be, and then I'll start feeding it through and tucking it down everywhere that it should go, and then I start the actual wiring process of getting the pickup from the high beams, attaching the negative, finding a spot for the relay, feeding the wires through the firewall for the switch, and then running the wire to the light bar itself. Make sure to leave the positive attachment to last, just so that it avoids any sort of random faults and stuff like that when you're installing it. Alrighty, so I've done most of the work here. I've laid out what I needed to, made sure everything reached. I mounted the relay down here, used a little self-drilling screw because there's no real bolts or anything around here to mount it, and I like to set it nice and flush down the bottom that it almost looks factory. Ran the power cables. I've got my positive on this side. Make sure when you're doing this to maintain contact when you're putting these cables on, that way you never have like a short or anything like that. And then the negative is just attached there. I'm temporarily running just the HB3 loom connector here for testing purposes, because unfortunately the cable I need to adapt into the whole headlight unit is out of stock at the moment, and I don't really want to be chopping and cutting wires and doing all that, because that makes it prone to corrosion and other things that can harm you later in life. And then for the roof lights, I was going to go through the interior and then up inside the A-pillar and then go down the back to that section there, if it'll focus, back through there and then feed it up to the front. But the wiring kit I got has a thin enough wire, which is this one here, which I fed under the plastics here. Need to tuck that one in a bit better. It goes under this trim piece, and then you can barely see it there. It's tucked in neatly in behind the windscreen, up into there, and then it comes out. So all I gotta do is plug that in. I've got all my other hookups powered on, and before I run this through the firewall, I'm gonna just test it and make sure that the light bar works, and then I can run that through, and then we can hook up the switch panel. See how hot it is? That's all me, and I can't have the fan running when I'm recording, because then that's all you. Alrighty, so I've got the car on, got the high beams on, everything's connected. I've shortened some of the wires up there, and we'll flick the switch and see if she turns on. Magnificent. Now this is a curved light bar, so you'll only get the full effect on the front, but that looks amazing. Now we just gotta sort out the switch, shorten and neaten up some of the wiring on the roof, and this job is done. Alright, to feed that wire through the firewall, just run it down there, tuck it through, then make a very small incision in the grommet on the firewall there, and then essentially you feed the wire through that little grommet. Then if you come onto the passenger side here, I've removed the glove box just so you can see it better, but you don't have to. You can actually reach up under here and be able to reach where it comes out of. But that's where it comes from there, and then you can grab it and just feed it through. Now this is probably one of the easier ones you can do that for, because there's a lot of cars that I've worked on in the past where essentially it doesn't even have a grommet on the firewall, it's just a plug or something, or it just has no way through, like bloody Volkswagens. But now that I've got that fed through, I'll neaten up the wiring. I'll show you how to remove and install that new fascia plate, and then how to finish wiring it up. All right, hopefully you can see this well. To remove this bottom plate here, first what we're going to do is remove these side panels. They're held in with very, very stiff clips. If I can, there we go. Those clips there, which reveals a bolt there. And then do the same thing on this side. Remove this plate here. It's exactly the same, just clips. There should be another bolt right here. So now that we've got that old switch panel out, you can see this is where the USB sits, and that's where the the 12 volt socket sits. And basically they've just got these little tabs that you push down and should be able to push it out on both sides. Should be the same with your Rangers that have two 12 volt sockets. It'll just be these little tabs here and here and on the bottom and all that. You just push those in and it'll push out, and then you can push that into the new one, and then it should go back in the way it came out, just these clips, and then the 2 bolts per side. Sorry, correction, with these 12 volt sockets, what you need to do is go from the inside and push those tabs out. Then you should be able to push this ring forward, which then allows you to remove the tabs for this. Otherwise, this ring sitting here prevents you from moving those tabs inwards to pull this assembly out. Alright, sorry I'm not going to be able to show you fully how to wire my switch panel in, because unfortunately they sent me the wrong color switches. I wanted full cyan, but unfortunately they sent me blue and green. So I've got to get those sent away and replaced, but when they come back, I'll show you how to fully wire. Alrighty guys, that should be about the end of that job. There are still a few things I'll be waiting on, like the proper connector for the headlight, but all the wires are tucked, zip tied down, and you can barely tell that anything's been added in there. All the wires have been tucked up there. Cleaned up the wiring on the light bar itself, made sure everything was tight. Got rid of any loose wires on there. On the inside, tucked up all the wiring and zip tied it to the factory loom that sits behind the glove box. Put the glove box back in. Put the switch panel in temporarily until they can get me my replacement switches so they can be cyan to match the rest of the dash. But it does work at the moment. It does have its power ground and power out, but I wasn't going to hook up the basically the lights for them, just so I don't have this bright green, bright blue light sitting on my dash. That doesn't make much sense. So it is just temporarily in there. I will remove it and give you guys a proper instruction video on how to wire it up. But besides that guys, I believe that's pretty much the install done. I'll see if I can get a video later on and show you the differences, and maybe then you can see my headlights as well during nighttime. But for now guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. And just for those of you who don't believe me that it's bloody hot where I am, it's just, yeah, that's 100% just sweat.